بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم أما بعد رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. Welcome back to the 5th session in our Ramadan FAQs series. Alhamdulillah, we have tried to answer as many questions as possible in the time allotted. As thoroughly as possible as well, so that we can all benefit, inshallah. There are, of course, going to be many questions that still remain in many people's minds, inshallah. We still have a question that we perhaps didn't address in our sessions that you would like to ask in regards to the month of Ramadan, inshallah. Please feel free to reach out through email and ask those questions, inshallah, so that we can continue to grow and learn and educate ourselves and be informed about such a blessed month that has so many ibadat jam-packed in it, right? So many things that we do. So many things that we do in the month of Ramadan, in addition to just the fasts, that have so many implications and so many rulings. Just the fast in itself has so many things. And there are so many other ibadat as well in addition to that, alhamdulillah. So with that said, inshallah, we're going to jump right into the first question for today. As I told you, that the theme of the questions will start to kind of change over time, inshallah. We talked about fasting, we talked about zakat and zakat al-fitr. And as we are entered into the last 10 days, actually, in fact, yesterday, it is only befitting that we talk about the i'tikaf, right? Inshallah. So the first question is, when does i'tikaf begin and end? Okay, so what we know is there's a sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam called the i'tikaf, where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the last 10 days of the month of Ramadan would seclude himself in the masjid, right? So he would seclude himself in the masjid in the last 10 days, meaning that he would not go to his house, he would not sleep at his house, he would not even eat at his house. But he would stay in the masjid and he would worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala throughout all day and night of these last 10 nights of the month of Ramadan. Obviously resting within reason, right? But he would stay in the masjid and he would close himself off within the masjid rather than being a person that goes out and about, and he would stay in the masjid the whole time, right? The only time he would exit would be to relieve himself for an absolutely necessary thing, till he go to the restroom and stuff like that. So this was the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He would do it for the last 10 nights in the last Ramadan of the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Sahaba narrate that the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in fact did 20 days of i'tikaf. Okay, so when does the i'tikaf begin and end? So it's the last 10 nights. So on the 19th, right? Keep in mind, again, it doesn't begin on the 19th, but the 19th day of the month of Ramadan, the Maghrib Salah of the 19th day, right? So what we have to keep in mind, and this is why I said the Maghrib Salah of the 19th day, is because the Islamic calendar follows a lunar navigation of the calendar, right? So when the sun sets, right, when it becomes dark, the next day will start. Okay, so today is, for example, the 20th day of the month of Ramadan. When the sun will set, the 21st night is going to start. So the night of that specific day will precede the day. Okay, I want us to understand that, right? So the night of 21st will come in, and then the day of the 21st will happen. Okay, and so on and so forth. So on the 19th, the night of the 19th day, which is the night of the 20th day, a person by Asr should try to be in the masjid, right? The i'tikaf will begin at the sunset. That's why you'll see masajid say, by Asr, try to be in the masjid. Why? Because you want to be settled in, have your things done. Something last minute comes up, you have the opportunity to go back home and come back before the Salat al-Maghrib time comes in. And then you have to remain there up until the moon is sighted for Eid, right? So for the Eid moon to be sighted, will open, will end the i'tikaf. Astaghfirullah. Okay, so on the night, the 20th night, right, which will be at the end of the 19th day, by Maghrib i'tikaf begins, and it will remain all the way until the moon of Eid is sighted, even if the moon of Eid is sighted on the 29th night. Okay, so the Sunnah i'tikaf, right, the 10-day, the full i'tikaf will still be intact, right? So that is not going to be changed because, the moon was sighted on the 29th. No, it still will be intact, inshallah. The person that is intending the Sunnah i'tikaf will get the Sunnah reward, inshallah. Okay? So that's when i'tikaf begins and ends, inshallah. Moving along to the second question, inshallah. Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So the second question is, what is i'tikaf and how is it done, right? This is a very comprehensive question, inshallah. Or at least the answer is going to be very detailed, very comprehensive, hopefully, inshallah. So the question is, what is i'tikaf and how is it done, right? So we try there along the lines of what is i'tikaf, right? So a lot of times people misunderstand i'tikaf to be a certain thing when it's not really that, or they understand it to be not something, and it is that. Right? For example, is i'tikaf an obligation, or is it a sunnah? Right? A lot of times people think i'tikaf is a voluntary thing, and absolutely it is, right? But at the same time, and it seems like it's something very simple. I mean, you just kind of sleep in the masjid, but you're free to go in and out and do what you want and when you want and how you please in i'tikaf. But in reality, it's not that. Right, so that's it. So there's a lot of understanding to do when it comes to what is i'tikaf and how does one actually really go about doing it and fulfilling it in the proper manner. So first and foremost, i'tikaf is fard ala al-kifaya, right? Fard ala al-kifaya and even mu'akkada, right? They will say fard ala al-kifaya mu'akkada, right? So it is not a fard, rather it's a wajib, according to the Ahnaf at least. It is a wajib act that is an obligation, is wajib on all of the community that is part of the masjid community. However, ala al-kifaya, meaning that as long as one person does it on behalf of the entire community, it will absolve the remainder of the people within the community. If nobody ends up doing it, then they will all become liable. They will all become accountable by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and become sinful, right? So i'tikaf within a community that has a valid masjid, an actual established masjid, they should have at least one person doing the i'tikaf. Now, a question arises, why isn't ICA even allowing the i'tikaf this year? We're a masjid. is because a few reasons, right? We're not as of yet, inshallah, a designated masjid. We are still a musalla in a sense, because we have not uh, permanently intended that area to become a masjid. Because once you've done that, the masjid area can never be transformed to anything else. So obviously, we're in a temporary space, inshallah. And once we get into our permanent space, inshallah, then i'tikaf will become liable on the entire community of Aubrey, inshallah, right? As well as obviously with the pandemic, and then the arrangements that we have are not appropriate. Even then, inshallah, yes, we can work around the arrangements, but we are not a qualified masjid at the moment, inshallah. We're a musalla, and therefore, father is not it's not on the community that only has a musalla, not a proper masjid, inshallah. Okay. So that is the first thing, right? Fard ala al-kifaya, inshallah. It's fard on everybody. If at least one person does it, absolves everybody else. If nobody does it, then everybody in that community is liable for it. The second thing I want us to keep in mind is that when a person starts doing the i'tikaf, right? Is it okay? We take it very easily a lot of times, right? So what happens? A person staying i'tikaf for 10 days. It's very difficult, right? We're social creatures, and so especially in the month of Ramadan, what happens is that this happens and that happens. People begin to eat, and especially in the last night, people that are not in the actual sunnah i'tikaf, they come and they partake in ibadat, but at the same time, they have their snacks, they have food, they're be able to go in and out, stuff like that. And the people that are sitting in i'tikaf, they find themselves wanting to do that and interacting with these people. But you have to understand that the mu'takifin have to stay within a designated area, meaning that you have to spend all your time, unless necessary otherwise, in the designated prayer space, right? To go beyond that, to go into the lobby, go into the kitchen, go into the gym, go into the parking lot, going into any place else just to socialize unnecessarily, will in fact invalidate the i'tikaf or the sunnah i'tikaf, right? So be very particular about that. If you're actually intending to do the i'tikaf, be within the designated area and don't go out into spaces that aren't considered the designated prayer area, right? Understand, if there's a prayer area, there's back rooms. If they are not in the designated prayer space of the masjid, and you should ask the management if you're sending i'tikaf and clarify what is a designated prayer area. Is it beyond this or that or this, that? And every masjid should have it demarcated, right? That this is the designated prayer space. And after this, at this point, right? So some masjids will have the main prayer hall, they'll have small rooms, babysitting rooms, or an extended room that goes into the lobby. All these things, right? Might not necessarily be the designated prayer space, right? Because understand that once you've designated a space, you can't go back, ikhwan. That's why it's so important, right? So masajid management have to be very particular about designating a space that's a musalla. You can't alter it. You have to keep it as a salah. Everything else, then you have the freedom and the capacity of changing that, altering that. A lot of times you have to understand, sisters coming into designated prayer space of the masjid is impermissible, but in the other spaces of the masjid it's okay, right? So before you designate the whole boundary, the whole space of the masjid as a masjid, be very careful. Don't include the courtyard or the lobby and these things as a designated prayer space, because it can cause issues for sisters and other people. So be very vigilant and be particular about it. However, we went on a tangent, inshallah. But these are things that masajid should definitely keep in mind and encourage your masjid if it's in the process of being built, like ours is in ICA, or in other communities, to be vigilant of that, inshallah. Anyways, so staying within the designated prayer space, okay, the prayer area, unless otherwise you have to leave, meaning like if a person actually has to use the restroom, and that's outside, of course, then you are allowed to go and relieve yourself and come back, not wasting time, not lingering around, not doing anything else to delay that trip unnecessarily. Do your job and get right back, right? If a person has to make a fard ghusl, right, they've had a wet dream or whatever it may be, obviously they would do any marital relationships in the masjid, but it would be if they had to make a fard ghusl, or they got something happened, and they had to take a ghusl or change of clothes that was necessary, then they would be able to do so, even if they needed to go home and do that and come back, okay? Because that is something that is necessary for him to be able to fulfill their ibadat, and this will not invalidate the sunnah i'tikaf, inshallah. So understand that the sunnah i'tikaf will begin. It's from the night of the 20th, all the way up until the moon is sighted, rather, of the Eid. But also keep in mind This is sunnah i'tikaf. Now, for many of us, what happens is qiyam going on in the masjid. There's some activity, or even if there's no activity, I want to go and spend at least a few hours, or at least from Isha Tarawih to Fajr, or certain portions, hours of the night in the masjid. Can you intend a nafil i'tikaf? Yes, you absolutely may do so, inshallah, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward you for every moment you are in the masjid. However, it will not be the sunnah i'tikaf, okay? So you can have those intentions, inshallah, and one should actually do that, right? If I plan on during this Ramadan going into one of our local masjids, spending some time at night, make the i'tikaf, right? Ya Allah, I'm intending to be in i'tikaf for the next 2 hours. Accept it as a form of i'tikaf for me, inshallah, and Allah will be generous, inshallah. So do that. So there's gonna be a lot of information, inshallah. Fasting is does a person for the sunnah i'tikaf have to fast? Yes, that's a prerequisite. Okay, if you cannot fast, then inshallah you can still worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but the sunnah i'tikaf of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam requires that you do it in the last 10 days of Ramadan, and you're in the condition of fasting as well. Okay, that you're healthy enough to do that, inshallah. Eating and all of that is absolutely allowed, obviously, because outside of the fasting hours, but be vigilant, right? This is something that should again be done in the masjid. Okay, should be done in the masjid. However, due to obviously cleanliness and maintaining our masajid, if the masjid has a rule where you don't eat in the actual prayer space and you rather they have a designated space to go and eat there and just return immediately thereafter, would be permissible as well without invalidating the sunnah i'tikaf. However, masajid should be vigilant of trying to accommodate the mu'takifin as comfortably as possible. Okay, they're doing us as a community a favor. Don't impose certain things on them that are going to make it difficult for them, inshallah. Okay. If a person is has a habit of either smoking or doing this and that, when they obviously cannot do whatever that is in the masjid, right? Smoking or something like that, but they have the urge to do so, and they have the craving. They may go outside, smoke while they're fulfilling their other needs, have hopefully, and then wash themselves and clean themselves and come back, and that will not invalidate the sunnah i'tikaf. Okay, so be vigilant about that, inshallah. Be particular about not wasting, going out to lobbies and this and that, inshallah. Be punctual about that, talking. So a lot of times there's this within certain cultures, it is mentioned that if you talk outside of Quran and dhikr or recitation or ibadat that is spoken on the tongue, it will invalidate the i'tikaf. No. However, one should not waste his time or her time, right? Taking the cell phone and surfing on it or talking on it or just talking to someone in the i'tikaf, right? A couple of people just get together and all they're doing is chatting away most of the time. That defeats the whole objective and the purpose of i'tikaf, right? Be particular about how the tongue is used. Yes, having some downtime or having some conversation here and there, it's okay in i'tikaf. It's not that stringent. But at the same time, be particular about being productive as well in the i'tikaf. Okay, you're representing the whole community as well as yourself, and so be particular about the sunnah i'tikaf. Also, something like engaging in worldly talk for too much, even in the masjid as it is, and on top of that, the i'tikaf amplify it much more, inshallah. Okay, so these are some things. How does one and how is it done? So you confine yourself in the masjid, in the i'tikaf area, the designated prayer space, inshallah. Do as much ibadah there, make your intention before, and to break it to when the when the moon of Eid is sight, inshallah. Being particular about that. The third question is going to be a little bit long, addressing this issue for women. Okay, so we made it a separate question. So if the sisters have felt like, hey, no one has answered, Shaykh is not answering our questions, inshallah, here we go. Okay, so the third question is how and where should a woman do i'tikaf? Okay, we're running short on time, but inshallah, I'm going to try to answer this as best as possible for the women folk, inshallah. Oftentimes, subhanAllah, Allah reward our women folk, especially. Um, they are the ones that are the most active, the ones that have the zeal to a certain time, a lot of times fulfill their ibadat. Just in general, right? They're really always interested and always willing to and always wanting to do the ibadat as well as voluntary work. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve the women folk in our communities. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward them, inshallah, and give us men folk the zeal as well. But how and where should a woman do the i'tikaf? So the i'tikaf of a woman, that's the sunnah i'tikaf again, right? When we talk about i'tikaf, we default referring to the sunnah i'tikaf, meaning the i'tikaf of Rasulullah, so the one he talks about, would be, and the precedence is that what the fuqaha say, right? What do the fuqaha of the four madhahib actually imply when it comes to the i'tikaf for the women folk, and where and what, how is it conducted? They say that it should be in the normal prayer area that the women folk have designated within their homes, right? So generally, I'm sure we do, is that women folk have a certain place or a certain area, a certain room that they do their acts of ibadah, right? So their Quran, their salah, so that kind of becomes their musalla. Okay, so when they intend to and they want to do the i'tikaf, it will start and begin and end at the same time as the men folk. It's just the place will be her designated place in the home. And she will try to restrict herself there for the whole 9 to 10 days. Try to sleep there, try to even eat there, try to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala there, and go to the other portions of the house if necessary, right? So if you're going to the restroom and if it's a room that the restroom is attached to, try to use that restroom so that you can be in and out. If you need to go grab something from the other part of the house, you can, but try to have all that you need beforehand in the masjid. Like if you were living in the masjid and you would take all your stuff with you, try to do that as well in the i'tikaf, right? So if your clothes and this and that, your sleeping arrangement, your supplies that you'll need at night, your toothbrush, things like that, just bring them into that room, kind of set it up there, have an arrangement. And yeah, it might not look the best to have all that stuff there, but you're intending to do this in i'tikaf, so do so for a temporary, inshallah. Then everything can go back to its place on the day of Eid or the night of Eid, inshallah. Okay, so you can rearrange those things, inshallah. So to be particular about that, try to do that, right, inshallah. If not, yes, it's not going to invalidate the i'tikaf, right? If you have to leave your clothes in your closet in your master bedroom, you have to just go and get them sometimes to change. That will not invalidate the fast, okay? The i'tikaf, but be confined as much as possible to that space where you pray, okay? If the space is just not appropriate, it's not conducive, normally I'll pray in a spot where it's not going to really be conducive for me to sit in i'tikaf, for example, right? So then one can actually find a room, a place where they can say, you know what, from now on, I intend to pray my salah in this place during the i'tikaf, and I'm going to confine myself to this room, right? So there's a guest bedroom that's not going to be used, and that's the best place for me to isolate myself for i'tikaf. If you want to do that, inshallah, by all means, you can do that as well, inshallah. Okay, so that's where a woman can do her i'tikaf, inshallah. How, right? So similar to the men folk, inshallah, very exact same concept, but keep in mind, if the woman menstruates, if she has, it interrupts the i'tikaf, it will end the i'tikaf. Okay, unfortunately, it will end the i'tikaf. So whether it's 3 days in, whether it's not 8 days in, it will unfortunately end the i'tikaf. Inshallah, Allah will reward based on the intention. Know that, right? So don't be despondent or discouraged that, oh, subhanallah, I want to do this, but now, my i'tikaf broke. So don't be discouraged or upset over that fact. Inshallah, will reward according to the intention, inshallah. But at the same time, understand that since you were already engaged in a nafil ibadah, you were already middle of it. After the month of Ramadan, you should make up 1 day as a qada, at least, right? Even if you have like 7 days left or 5 days left, at least one minimum. So that way it serves as a qada because you were in the middle of i'tikaf still. to do so. So I'll be particular about that. Um, for women folk, if there is nobody else to step in and help with at least cooking and this and that, and that is your job in the household, um, then to exclude separate yourself for that, inshallah, with a minimum amount of engagement, right? Doing that and getting back. But ideally, let the family should come and help the women folk at this time. If they're really intending to do their itikaf on the behalf of the community. Um, Especially now with the pandemic going on and subhanAllah numbers being low for the brothers. Last year we couldn't even have the itikaf. It was a perfect time for us to appreciate our women folk and facilitate them doing their itikaf within the homes, right? Because the men have to do it in the masjid, the sisters can do it in the homes. But she can go, and the family should understand, right? This is the mother, whoever the women are that are responsible for the meals. If they're doing their itikaf, give them a chance to focus on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and pick up their slack, inshallah, for those 10 days, right? Or be comfortable enough with having a very minimal meal for the last 10 days of the month of Ramadan. We should be as it is, but if we were not thus far, at least at that time when she's already trying to do something that is an active ibadah, inshallah, and it's a beautiful spiritual journey, inshallah. So secluding yourself, inshallah, within your homes or the masajid for the men folk, inshallah, it's something that a believer should do at least once in their lifetime, and if possible every year, if not possible every so often at least. Try to do it every so often at the very least, because it's a beautiful journey. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to seclude himself. All the prophets to some degree, right? Musa alayhi salam was made to seclude himself before he was met Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was seclude himself before the wahi, right? So there's a lot of benefit that is derived from a person that secludes himself or herself, inshallah. Inshallah, I think that will cover everything. So, okay. Inshallah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept our ibadat. Inshallah, those that are sitting in itikaf in their homes, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept from them. Inshallah, those that are sitting in the masjid, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept from them as well. Inshallah, in the various communities and the various masajid. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to experience this beautiful, beautiful act of ibadah in the itikaf of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when we are experiencing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, allow us to truly appreciate it and benefit from it in the best of manner, inshallah. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Inshallah, we'll see you guys again for our last sessions, our last two sessions, inshallah, next weekend. The Ramadan FAQs, inshallah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.